Shoes. Recorded live.
Hello, everybody. This is the Genesis Science Fiction Radio broadcast for 22nd of March, kind of a cold beginning to spring. The Genesis Science Fiction Radio Show is a service of the BlackScienceFictionSociety.com website. Tonight's special guest is quadruple, quintuple, I don't even know, sextuplet. No, that's how many babies you have. Threat, Erica Hughes. She's a screenwriter. She's been a ghostwriter. She teaches. Well, actually, I'm not going to go and do the whole litany. What I'll do is we'll just go over what you do as we go along. But why don't you say hello to everybody, Erica?
Hi, everybody. Thanks
everybody.
for listening.
All right. Well, let me ask you this. Let's get started here. I noticed that you are located in the Midwest. You're currently in the Madison, Wisconsin area. And could you tell us a little bit about where you grew up and what kinds of experiences that you had, and maybe even the kind of experiences that you had that led you to do the things that you do today?
Let's see. I grew up in I kind of grew up in two places. I grew up in Chicago, Illinois, south side of Chicago, big city. So I was pretty much used to that. Somewhere around 15 and a half, I moved to Las Vegas, where my father worked as a performer. He was in a cover band. He still is. And they basically like a cover band for the Temptations, for example.
Wow.
And they performed at Vegas hotels. One of the things I do regret, though, is I didn't get to see him perform because obviously I wasn't old enough to get into the venues where he played. But Vegas, some of the casinos, they do have places for the young people. But that was one of the things I didn't get to do while I was there. But that's what brought me there. So I went to school in Vegas and Chicago. What got me started just doing some of the things that I do, I was in Chicago, and I was probably about 8 years old, and I was going to, I think it was Sabarboro Elementary.
Okay.
And I probably was like in the third grade. I think it was that school. And I won a poetry contest. It was a citywide poetry contest. And we had to write a Black History Month poem. And I won this citywide contest.
Wow. What year was that?
This was, you aging me now. I was 8, somewhere between 7 and 9. I want to settle on 8. And
okay.
So there had to be, oh my gosh, let's see.
I'm not trying to be nosy,
80.
but remember, well, no, because
maybe 82 or something like that, 83.
Yeah, no, the reason why I was asking was because, Black History Month, is a relatively new construct, for our country. I mean, like the last half century, I'm saying. So, I was just trying to place that. But that's pretty good. I mean, and was the school a public school or a private school?
Yeah, it was Sabarboro Elementary on the south side of Chicago, somewhere around 85th and Ingleside, somewhere in that area.
That's pretty cool because when you stop and think about it, I mean, to win a poetry contest in the Chicago school system, I mean, there are so many hundreds of thousands of students. That's a pretty remarkable feat.
Yeah.
And I'm sure your folks were pretty proud of you.
I don't even think they knew.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, I don't remember a lot of hoopla being made about it. I just remember being very proud of myself.
Sure.
And it was just a poem called Black on Black Love. And, the school itself, they gave me a lot of accolades and praise or whatever. But as far as, like, my mother or my father getting involved, and I don't remember beyond that because I was so young. But I do remember that's what gave me the writing bug, just getting that feedback and being acknowledged for something.
And the encouragement.
Yeah, the encouragement. That's the best. Yeah, that's a good word for it. The encouragement. I started writing poems, from time to time, and as I got older, I started to do it more often, and that was it.
That's pretty cool. Do you remember when the first time you were published?
First published, yeah, that was in 2004, 2005, and it was
that?
Actually,
oh, go ahead.
Oh, cool. It was actually that book of poems that I had written over the years.
Wow.
Through high school and all that stuff.
So you the first thing that you published was a compilation of your own work.
Mhm.
And how was it received?
People like it, but one of the things I've noticed with poetry, it's not a high demand. Like out of all of my books, that one sells the least.
Okay.
I did a free promotional giveaway because Kindle, they have it set up where, and I don't know if a lot of people know about this, you can get free Kindle ebooks. And a lot of authors, for promotional reasons, will say, hey, on this day you could download my book for free.
Okay.
And even if you don't have a Kindle and you have a
smartphone or a computer.
Right, smartphone or a computer, you can download it to that. And whereas the other books, I think at one point 7,000 people downloaded one of my books. I actually didn't like that because I'm like, that's a lot of people getting the book free.
That's a lot of money.
That is. That's a lot of money when you add it up. I'm like, that's like $20,000 or something like that. But the poetry book, I'm like, my goodness, I can't give it away. Nobody downloaded this thing free, and I was just surprised by that. But I'm thinking, how often do I go out and I look for a poetry book? Like, geez, I just want to buy some poetry. At least people, who are buying ebooks, maybe it's not their thing. So I was a little surprised by that.
Well, I wouldn't be too disappointed. Remember, people often discover different facets of you at different times in your career. And sometimes it doesn't always line up like that. Simply because you did a poetry book first, maybe people will be coming back around to that a little bit later when they want to know a little bit more about you.
That is true, and poetry is so personal.
It really is, yeah.
Yeah, so I do have people that I know personally who enjoyed it. My godmother, for example, she's really funny. She has like the original notebook that I wrote in when I was a teenager.
Okay.
And she's kept it since I was, just in my mid-teens. I started writing in it when I was 14, and I think at some point she kept that book. Somehow it ended up in her possession, and she's keeping it for safekeeping. I don't even have a copy of all the stuff that I wrote. And sometimes she'll read it to people. And so I always thought that was that's pretty neat because she loves it so much. And the people that she'll read it to, they'll say, oh, who is she? Where can I buy it? And so I'm like, oh, I got a good promoter out there, Well, so
that is great because, obviously she likes your work. Although I just want you to think about this in the back of your mind. Don't be heartbroken if you ever see it on eBay. Okay? Because
right?
when you get your Pulitzer Prize or whatever, and then all of a sudden somebody says, "Hey, I saw your notebook on eBay," you'll know what that's about. Try to get a copy of it first before she sells it.
I know, and I'm like, I can't even imagine how that book, the condition it's in now, because it's so old. It's like, oh my gosh.
Oh, you're not that old.
Yeah, I'm getting up there.
Well, you got a great picture, a great publicity picture, and sometimes that helps a lot. Let me ask you this. How did you get to Madison, Wisconsin?
My mother moved here first. She is an investigator with the federal government, or she does investigations for them through the Department of Labor. And she moved here to work for them, for that agency, and I followed maybe like 3 years later. And
about what year was that?
That was like in 2000. Actually, it was December 2000. It's an interesting story behind that. But Chicago just got, I have a family. Chicago just got a little rough. And I was like, not the place to raise a family. It's a place. I mean, it's great if you're a single person. But I would go back without the kids once they're they're grown up. So
sure. And now, how many kids do you have, and how old are they?
I have a 21-year-old son.
Mm-hmm.
So he's an adult now, and I have a 17-year-old, and it's kind of like in succession, 17, 16, and 15.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, that's a handful.
Yes.
And how do you think you are as a mom? Are you, a well-adjusted mother, or does it still give you fits after all this time? I mean, how is motherhood for you?
It's awesome. I mean, because they're teenagers, so of course, they have their moments.
Sure.
But I don't want to say I trained them. It's a bad word to use. But, just early on, I kind of set some boundaries very early on. And so they kind of know what to do, and they're comfortable in those boundaries. They don't venture out of them too much.
Right.
So I haven't had, and Madison is just so uneventful. Nothing really happens here. So it's like, it's been a pretty smooth ride for me.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I just had a little feedback there. All right. So you moved up to Madison, and you moved there to be close to your mother, or did you have something else that brought you up there? Like a job or school or something like that?
No, I actually left school to move here. I was in college, and I was going to Olive Harvey in Chicago. At the time.
A fine institution. I graduated from there in 1973.
Nice.
Well,
you lived in the same area, sort of, and went to, grew up in Chicago. Yeah, I went to Olive Harvey.
some of my friends went to your school. It was a little earlier before you were there. We didn't, but I had friends who went to Dunbar. We played them in football. I got injured playing with those guys, against those guys. I don't hold it against anybody. Anybody who's stupid enough to be a 135-pound quarterback deserves what they get.
No.
But the south side of the Chicago is an interesting place to grow up. And also, I suspect that having grown up down here, where I'm on the north side now, but having grown up there, it made living in Vegas and made living in Madison a little bit easier because you had some pretty good survival skills, some street skills. Is that correct?
Pretty much. I have a sixth sense when it comes to danger. But yeah, it is what it is. And your question, did I leave just to follow my mother? No. Because it was kind of cool that she was all the way out here and I was all the way out there. But just family life. I just at that time didn't feel it was a good place to raise 3 young men. I wanted something that they didn't have to worry about name brands, or they didn't have to worry about just the whole city mentality. I wanted them to have the quality of life to be a little slower. I just want to slow things down a pace and just see what it's like. Because I didn't grow up like that. I grew up in, Chicago and then another fast city. So
sure.
So yeah. So that was primarily it.
Yeah, I don't know what kind of teenage life there is in LA, but I do know Madison very well. I went to school there, and I spent a lot of time there, and my folks had a house just north of there that I spent a lot of time at. But growing up black in Madison, Wisconsin is certainly not what you would consider a very hectic urban experience. It's a little more laid back. It's almost like an intellectual ghetto in the state of Wisconsin in terms of people. You have a huge international contingent in that area. People who come from all over the world to go to that school. Yeah. That's a pretty famous school, and it's a good school. Now, what about the school system for your kids? The high schools, the elementary schools. Did they have a pretty decent time growing up in that environment?
They did. I mean, it had its ups and its downs. I mean, like you said, being, in a city, and,
Mm-hmm.
it's not a huge, I think black people make up about 12% of the population.
Correct.
So growing up in in an environment like that, there's bound to be racism, and other things. But
Mm-hmm.
so I would say we made of it what we could. So it was happy for us because that's the way we made it. But it had its downside too. And I'm not saying it's prevalent and it's like horrible or anything like that. It wasn't, but there were moments raising the kids where they had some questions about something someone said or the way someone reacted to them.
Yeah, I was a disc jockey in that whole area for a long time, and whenever things got a little tense with the Caucasian people, I would just put on the record "Sweet Home Alabama," and they'd calm right down. They all of a sudden they turn their attention elsewhere. So that's an old DJ trick. Let me ask you this: How did moving there affect your writing career, your creativity? What was it that kind of drove you to do all of the myriad of things that you've done? And we'll get to them, and we'll give out the websites and all of that information a little bit later. But I am curious about how it fed your creativity and made you kind of into what you are now, since you're already still there.
I feel like in Chicago I got the life experience.
Mm-hmm.
And the sensitivity and the empathy and just that part of me that makes me who I am and how I look at things and how I look at people. That's what I got from Chicago.
Okay.
And then back in Chicago, I was writing poetry, I was writing short stories, and screenplays when I left. That's where I was. I wasn't writing novels yet.
Okay.
But I think if I was in Chicago, I wouldn't be as prolific as I am now because there's so much to do. There's so much life to live there, whereas here
like
it's a little
distractions?
bit slower. Right. I would have had a few more distractions. Because there was always something for me to be involved in, even at school. And that's another thing, too, that really kind of triggered that. You remember I mentioned before about contests. I won a contest, first place at Olive Harvey, their first English literature contest. And so I won first place. And they had a couple of first place winners. And it's still online. I think if you Google, it'll come up somewhere. That was another one. And so that kind of made me want to write stories. It kind of, I just kind of bumped it up a bit. And when I got out here, it was quiet. I didn't have a lot of interruption. I didn't have any friends at all. So I'm moving to this new place. Yeah, I didn't know anybody here except my mother.
Yeah.
And so I didn't have any friends for, maybe the first 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
And, I just had like a TV, and that was it. TV and VCR at the time, and that was it. So
were you working at all?
I did work and went to school. I went to Concordia University, and then I worked just, regular office job.
Okay.
Just worked a regular office job, and it didn't pay a whole lot.
Mm-hmm.
And that was it, and that was the first 2 years. And then I took a break in 2003, and that's when I really, because at that point I was learning a lot about what I wanted to do, and a lot of the experiences I had came from simply talking to people and sending out query letters, and one of the things I learned was important was meeting people and making friends and networking. So I started to learn a lot about the different industries, especially with regard to screenwriting. So around 2003, I took a year off from school, from everything. And, I narrowed my hours down. I was only working part-time, but it was enough for me to live on.
Sure.
And I built my first website, and that was the Screenwriters Daily, and I just got really immersed into that whole writing culture, subculture. And, you just spend a lot of time researching different things and, communicating with different people, and learned a lot of tips and tricks. And here I didn't have any distractions. I still, didn't have a lot of friends here yet. So I just had time to be creative, and that was how I filled the time.
Did you meet a lot of creative people in the Madison area who kind of helped drive you or at least support you?
Nope.
Really?
Nope. I mean here, and that's the thing about being African American or black. I just like to say black in Madison, is that, and this is probably really negative, but one of the things that I've noticed about Madison, and they do have a little subculture here, but it's hard to find if you don't know the right people. You have your movers and your shakers, and you have your academics, you have your people who are into the politics here, black people who are into politics. And I met a few of them last summer when they do that thing, Dane Dance, last year. And that was like my first time, like, meeting a lot of the people that are embedded in politics and things like that. But one thing about Madison is that they're used to, they have a perception of black people, and they see them as these one-dimensionally. So when they meet you, they're not expecting a creative person, and that's unusual because black people are generally known as being very creative.
I ran into the same thing in Green Bay. I mean, when I went up to Green Bay, the only black people that they had that were of note were the Green Bay Packers, the football team, and some of the, I hate to say it, some of the affirmative action people who came in for the Fortune 500 for Procter and Gamble and things like that.
Yeah,
so
that's pretty much
the same thing. Yeah, the same thing. They had
and the athletes. That's it.
Yeah.
And if you see a black person in the newspaper, it's either a crime or a sports story. So, and Madison has very little crime. I think they average about 5 murders a year or something, and they're usually domestic or something like that.
Yeah.
But, it's always little petty crimes or things like that. Or it's a story that's linked to poverty somehow. They're always slanted in this negative way. And
of course.
And I had one really bad experience. This is kind of a funny story, but it's kind of a humiliating story to me. The first year I moved here, I took a small office job working for the state. They didn't pay a lot, and I was a temp. And this is my first year. And it's the woman at the daycare that my kids went to, because they were still pretty young back then. She said, I used to complain about the lack of, transportation. I'm used to Chicago. You get a bus every 5 minutes, Well,
didn't they stop the buses at 6 p.m. there for the longest time?
I have no idea, but I do know that to me it's like, I think it's, you don't get a bus on every street or almost every other street. It's just so, you get about 5% of what you get in Chicago by way of public transportation.
Sure.
And then it's like a bus every hour or every half hour. And they all take you to a thing. But I don't ride the bus. I haven't ridden a bus in some years. Maybe like 10 years or whatever. But I used to complain like they have poor transportation. They have this, and I used to, when you first move someplace, you're comparing it to the place you just came from, so you really can't see it for what it is. So she said, well, there's a guy who's doing this article in the paper, Wisconsin State Journal. And he wants to talk to people that are moving here from Chicago. Now, at the time, I was very new. I didn't know that was a negative thing. If you're migrating from Chicago, you're a locust, descending on the city, sucking up the resources. So at the time, I wasn't aware of that dynamic. So I said, I would love to talk to him. This way I can rant and maybe somebody out there hear me. So we interview, and he, asked me how old I was, asked about my family size, and I'm like, oh, you have 4 children, we're doing great, we like it, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, the only thing I don't like is that in Chicago I never needed a car, but here, I have to get one now because, obviously there's a lack of transportation here. I said you can go to the grocery store in Chicago, and even a livery person will be outside, at least when I was there. And you could pay him $10 to take your groceries home. And so I'm just telling them the differences. So the article comes out maybe a couple of days later or a week later. And then it says census, and he asked personal questions too. You know, and I think at the time I just got in here, I was only making like $23,000 a year, which is not a lot when you're raising 4 kids. So, and I was working part-time at that. So I read the article, and it was, I forget the heading, but it was so negative. And I looked, and my heart just sank. I'm like, oh, my gosh. And so I get down to me, this is Erica Hughes. She has 4 children. She has no car. My mouth completely hit the floor. Hit the floor. And then he said, you know, she works for a job on a foster care thing or something to that effect. No, I work for the Department of Health and Human Services in that division. But he made it sound like it was some type of program.
Social service job. Yeah.
Right. Like a charity job almost. And the way that they painted the story, and I realized at that moment, I was so hurt. And I called him because I still had his business card. And his name was Andy Hall. And I called him. I said, why did you write an article like that? I didn't realize that was the type of article you were writing. I'm just talking about the differences between, you know, because this was a census article. It was something with census.
Right, the differences between here and there, not necessarily called, Right, and how that impacts me moving into the city. And he said, well, you know, it's there forever. Can't be changed. Man, I was ticked. So from that moment on, I knew that the way that article had been manipulated, to me, it was like I had been beaten up because I was very proud of myself, you know, just in my life, even at the age, and I probably was in my early 20s. Sure.
You know, but I felt like he had taken something away from me because I'm like, you know, I've been slowly building myself up, you know, in my life. For this person to make an article like that, it was absolutely horrifying. So,
well, it's a betrayal. It's a betrayal of trust. And even though you didn't have any reason to trust him, I mean, moving in someplace, and you know what? Madison is deceptively benign. You go there, and there's not a lot of overt racism. You go there, and people smile at you. You go to Perkins, you have your breakfast, whatever.
Yeah.
And people treat you a certain way that belies the undercurrent of, you know, the small-town Wisconsin mentality that really still permeates even its 2 biggest cities. You know, you've got Madison and you've got Milwaukee.
Yeah, so and that's exactly it. You know,
yeah.
So you look at people, and I at that point, I love the city, and I had noticed the issues with the media here and how black people were being depicted, but at that moment, I really realized how those things. I mean, what he said technically wasn't untrue; it was just the way that he made it sound.
Sure,
you know,
sure.
It sounds so horrible.
It was the slant, yeah.
Yeah.
You know, here's something that I found in the 70s because I was teaching at the time as well, and I was teaching sociology, and it had to do with basically in-group, out-group dynamics. One of the classes I taught was Black and White Americans, how we view ourselves and each other. And I found out that racial incidents in Wisconsin rise and fall with how well the Green Bay Packers were doing during the season.
Wow.
Exactly. We have a very well-known broadcaster here in Chicago on News Radio 78, and his name's Eric Brown. I met him at St. Norbert's, which is in a suburb of De Pere, and at one time, people at St. Norbert's, which is, you know, I think that's a Catholic-based school, if I'm not mistaken, or some kind of religious-based school. They were being threatened. Notes were being left on doors and things like that. And so it's disappointing that happens everywhere. It's just that at least in Madison, it's not always in your face. And so maybe that helps with raising kids. Maybe that helps with, you know, keeping a job where you don't have somebody always poking you in the eye all the time. But I mean, you've managed to stay there for well over a decade now. So you must either have gotten used to it or you play it better. Which do you think?
Yeah, no, I agree with that, but that's really interesting. But I'm still focusing on the Green Bay thing. You know, I guess the racism rising and falling with that. That's interesting. Just you know, I had to think about that for a moment. But Um,
Well, they're the most visible blacks in the state of Wisconsin. And the state of Wisconsin is very football oriented. I mean, they have the only team that is publicly owned. The team is owned by shareholders. So, I made the mistake of going to an outdoor football game wearing my Bears gear, and then I decided life is too short to have it end like that. So, I just they're very and they don't like people from Chicago. So that's all. That was a strike against you. You got a lot of things going for you. You had 4 kids. You're black. You're from Chicago. It can be untenable, but apparently you've made a good accommodation up there, and the accommodation has been good enough to feed your creativity.
It has.
Let people know where all of that came from. I mean, what is it up there that inspires you to do the kind of work that you do, the writing that you do, and how it sustains you in a not overtly hostile, but at least not an easy to live in environment?
See, if I tell you what really drives my writing, it might get too personal. But I will say that it's being single too.
Okay. Now, do you prefer being single to being married, or is this just a circumstance now? The only reason why I'm asking is you brought it up. I'm not. Well, I'm not trying to be overly personal, but people want to know about you and what makes you you. Because look how prolific you are. You're a screenwriter, you're a writer, you're a poet. You've got your websites. That's a lot of stuff to do. You have a lot of cool things happening. And I think people are interested in the kinds of personalities that can drive that measure of success over such a broad range of activities.
I know. And I work for a law firm.
Mm-hmm.
And I teach at the college here, Madison College, the publishing course. And then, the books that I write and the animation. It does sound like a lot. But I think when you're not in a relationship, you kind of have time. Oh, and I started in 2011. Don't ask why I chose this language, but I started to learn Chinese, Mandarin, and I just had so much fun with that.
Mm-hmm.
So that was one of the things that I did. But when you don't have, when you're not in a relationship, you just have time to really work on yourself, and that's I've been doing over the years. Yeah, and I've become obsessive about it, just working on me and being a better person and learning and growing and reading. And so when I come home, after work, the first thing I do is I start working on books, or whatever my obsession of the moment is. And so I don't socialize a lot. I have friends who are angry, are angry with me because I'm not spending enough time with them. They may want me to go out of town on a trip, and I'm like, I'm working on my book, and they don't understand it. They're like, you're always doing this. Why aren't you coming out with us? And I'm like, I don't want to. I want to stay here and create and write. And I think that's what, just life experience, wanting to get things, off of my chest, out of my head, having time, no distractions, and not being in a relationship. And I think and I'm getting, I'm getting a little analytical here, psychoanalytical here. I think that's why I write romance. I'm kind of like, I stopped writing the more serious stories and moved into romance because I wasn't in a relationship. And then, so I can kind of live vicariously through those characters and have fun with it. So it kind of feels a little bit of that void,
Well, no, you don't have to be tentative about it. I certainly understand it. Had I not gotten divorced, I probably never would have been a writer because that was what I filled my time with once I got divorced. I said, well, what are you going to do now? And, being kind of schizophrenic, I answered myself and I said, well, I don't know. What do you got to, and it ended up, I ended up writing a book. So I can relate to wanting to fill your time, wanting to fill it productively, and apparently you have the creativity to have put out the things that you do. So it makes perfect sense. And it can be very fulfilling. I can write things in a book that I can't either say, which surprises everybody because they think I have no filter whatsoever, or things that I would like to see, or ways I think things should happen. So it's kind of like the reverse of reading escapist literature. It's almost like writing it for an escape. Is that kind of how it is with you?
Yeah, that's exactly how it is. And I just enjoy it so much. It just it gives color to a black and white photograph for me. That's what life would be like if I wasn't doing something with that time and just living, watching TV and going out with friends. And I prefer to sit and write and do something with my time or make something. I paint, as a hobby. I'm terrible at it, but I've been doing that since the 90s, and I just like to do it. I'm not good at it, that particular activity, but I just like to do it. So I have like a big box of different paints and acrylics, and it's huge, and it's full of all these different paint brushes, and I have canvases sitting around the house. And when I want to paint, I pick them up and I paint them. The only thing I can paint, though, are trees and grass.
Well, hey, I know a guy who did quite well doing haystacks. So you can't judge merely by your subject matter. All right, so let's talk about some of the things that you've written. What have you done that you think is maybe some of your best work? What you would be proud of, or proudest of?
Proudest of are my novels.
Okay.
It's not easy to write a novel. Writing is different from, poetry is just, you can do a lot with it. There's a lot of flexibility. You can pretty much go in any direction with that. And I like doing it, but I don't write poetry that often anymore. Novels are a lot harder to write because you have to fill a lot of pages. You have to write a lot of words, and you have to have the time to do it. So I'm most proudest of that. And teaching also. Those are my two, I feel, are my big accomplishments.
How old are the people you teach?
They are from anywhere from 20s to up to 60s. I can tell that some people are in their 60s. So
it's adult education.
Yeah, it's
okay.
Every spectrum, every age in there, and that every age demographic there is represented in that class.
Wow.
Yeah. So.
And what's the best part of teaching for you?
Just having people who share an interest. They want to know something, and they trust me to give them the right information. They ask a lot of questions and when they're engaged. I would feel bad if people look bored. People were, nodding off and going to sleep. So I guess that's it.
Oh, you heard about my stand-up career. Okay, so moving on. How long have you been teaching? I mean, have you been doing this for a while now?
No, this is very new. I was hired last year.
Okay.
So that's when I started.
All right, and take us a little bit through the kinds of curriculum that you provide. Do you give them reading assignments? Do you make them do writing right off the bat? I mean, what kind of technique do you use as a teacher?
Well, I don't teach the writing class.
Oh, what do you teach?
I teach the class after writing. You should have finished your book when you get to me.
Oh.
And occasionally when you talk, the students talk about their books.
Sure.
And I may give them some feedback, but I teach publishing. So I teach them everything that they need to know about that process, what to expect, how to market, how to format the book, everything from top to bottom about publishing. So it's lecture-based. The only writing assignments that they have are writing query letters and letters that would help them pitch their stories to agents or publishers if they want to go that route. Because I talk about not only publishing or being an indie author or a self-publisher, just everything. If you want to publish with a traditional publisher, the class covers that as well. And it tells you who to avoid, the type of publishers to avoid, all the things that I had to learn on my own.
So essentially you're giving them the keys to the castle.
Yeah, pretty much. That's what my websites have been about, too. I mean, and even my other website, Right to Breathe, that's for not publishers, but authors and publishers. They can come there and post about their book, and that's, and to help them with their marketing. And so I just said, you know what, maybe I should sit and teach a class on this. And I just happened to, I was actually, I kind of thought about teaching, and it was really funny.
Yes.
I was actually on the school's website looking for a language course because I had just was learning how to speak Chinese, but I couldn't write in Chinese. So I wanted to get that information. I wanted a class on it, and they were offering one. And I think I saw something there, and I said, oh, they're hiring. And I just kind of looked at the classes that they were looking for faculty for, and I clicked something, and I just pitched the class. That class, they weren't offering that class. I pitched that class to them, and I had to go through the whole background checks. I had to bring my portfolio in, and all your educational background, and you had to prove that you could really carry this topic. So. And so it happened on a whim. It wasn't even something that I was planning to do.
Well, why don't you describe a little bit about the website that you have, the righttobreathe.com?
Yeah, it has. Go ahead, please.
Is that kind of like the internet-based source or internet-based information clearinghouse for what you're actually teaching in the classroom?
No, because there's no publishing information. Only thing on that website, and it's right, right, ting, right, WRITE, tobreathe.com, or you can type authorstoread.com, and it'll give you the same website. And basically, if you're looking for books to buy, there's a lot of books there. And so authors can come to the website, register an account, and then they could submit an article about their book. So from there, they'll post it, and then I'll see that, I have some submissions waiting, and then I can approve it. I'll look at it. If it looks okay, then I approve it. So basically, I publish on the website, information about their books, however they want to phrase it. And some people write articles because you can submit articles or essays. So it's different things like that, but I don't really teach them anything. It's just a place that people could come and read about books.
kind of like an information clearinghouse for other people's books and people who are looking to maybe get more information about their own work out?
Bingo.
Okay.
So people subscribe to the site, and then once a month, all of the submissions and articles that were posted to the site go out in an email blast. So a couple of thousand people will get an email just telling them what the new books are this month. Okay.
I noticed that you have been engaged in some film projects and moving in the, obviously, doing screenwriting is being engaged in film projects, but why don't you describe to people a little bit about what you do in that genre?
Mostly what I've been doing, because I'm going to be honest, my heart isn't into screenwriting anymore.
Okay.
I've kind of transitioned out of it, and I mostly maintain Screenwriters Daily because it gives me a platform to talk to other people, and it gives me a platform to it gives me a place to help people still. Sometimes I'll talk to other screenwriters and say, hey, should I let Screenwriters Daily go? It's been there for 10 years.
Okay.
And they say no. No, we need it. And there are people who are there because they're interested in the animation and
Sure.
the cartoon and how to pitch their cartoon to networks that article has been there. That's the most popular article on the website. So I kind of stickied it to the page, and it's been there since like 2004, 2005.
Wow.
So, but I don't. I shouldn't say I don't write them anymore. I just don't have an interest in writing screenplays, and the reason why is because it's hard to sell a screenplay. You can produce it yourself, or you can do, or you can let, or you could keep sending out query letters and begging people to produce your screenplay, and
then have them steal it and pretend like they never even heard of you,
or take elements out of it. I had an experience once where I thought someone had taken something out of a screenplay that I wrote, and it was Lionsgate Films, and I remember this is back in 2002 or something like that, 2002, 2003, when I was really into screenwriting. And this, I sent 3 letters out. And what happens in screenwriting is that when you write a screenplay, nobody will read it because they're afraid that if they have a project already in the works and you send them your script and they don't even read it, but they come out with their movie and you say, hey, I sent them my screenplay. That's for my script. And then they get sued. They won't even look at your work. They won't even open the envelope. They'll stamp no solicitations, and they'll send it back to you unopened. They'll stamp it. So what I did is I sent mine, instead of sending it to a reader or a producer, I sent my query letters to 3 executives.
Okay.
2 of them came back unopened with a hand on it saying, return to sender.
The big purple hand, yes.
Yeah. Rejected. But the third one, and this guy was the VP, of some department at Lionsgate Films.
Sure.
His assistant opened it, and she's a reader for him. She can read, if she likes it, she can pass it on.
Right.
So she ended up reading about 5 of my screenplays.
Okay.
So I kind of had this connection in. I mean, and that's huge because it's very hard to get anybody to look at your work when you're screenwriting. I mean, just look at it. So that was pretty huge that she, would read my work. So a movie came out maybe 2 years later, and I was still in contact with her, and I had just sent her a screenplay a couple of months before. 5 months later, this movie comes out, and I swear this scene was almost like they just took that page out and put it into that movie.
Yeah.
Freaked me out. And
Did you confront her?
I didn't confront her because I had to, be objective about it. Do they really want my screenplay? No, they don't. I don't think that they do. I just think it was a coincidence.
Right.
It was just a coincidence, and the stories were the same. The story was about a secretary who was in love with her boss, and her boss was in love with her, and he was, but he was mean to her, and in one of the scenes at the end of the script, she slapped him, and the same exact thing. It was the same exact setup. Secretary boss. The movie was actually called Secretary, and it starred Maggie Gyllenhaal and James Spader or something. The one that they came out with. You've seen that one?
I saw that one. I thought it was the what you call it, Hughes, English boy. I can't remember his name.
Oh, well,
they all look alike to me. Yeah.
Right. Well, that was the movie, and that scene was exactly like it was in my screenplay, and it was almost the same plot. It was basically a meek secretary working for this, demanding boss, except they ended up in this, what do you call it, when the ladies are dominatrix. What is it? Gosh, I forgot.
An S&M club? I mean, I've only heard. I've never been to one, but I've heard they're called S&M clubs.
Sure.
Yeah, exactly. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
That was basically the only difference, is that they had some type of S&M relationship where he liked to be beat by her in the movie. But I thought they totally stole the plot from mine. And then I took a seat back. I said, you know what? that movie came out like 4 or 5 months after she read my script. There's no way they could bring the actors in, get the budget, get the production team together, get the principal photography together, just do all of this, rewrite the script. They couldn't do that in 5 months. It's impossible.
And if we were to be entirely honest, I mean, there are very few original ideas out there. Almost everything has been said, written, or done. Yeah. And now we're at the point where, you just have to be creative about your variation on the theme. You may have an idea that is a different spin on boy meets girl, boy hates boy, boy hates girl, whatever. Boy and girl find each other and fall in love. I mean, all of those formulas have been done, and they've been done to death. So, I mean, the variations, you could have something that you write, and then all of a sudden you read something and somebody has written the exact same thing, and it's just not that coincidental anymore. It just happens. Because
and I actually have such a fear of that when I write my books, I like to come out with them within 2 weeks of writing them. And usually people take time, they pour over for months, and, they read it. I like to get mine out there because it just has to be out there before somebody else beats me to it. It's one of my fears. But, yeah, I think they call it collective consciousness, where there's more than one person with the same idea.
And you know what? The thing is that basically as people, humans are similar in emotional makeup, in intellectual makeup, and obviously there's infinite variations. But there's only a certain number of ways that you can do something, and there's only a certain number of ways that something can happen. And the variations are simply not as big as we would like to imagine. Anything can happen. Well, no, not anything can happen. Monkeys are not going to fly out of my butt. That's not going to happen. But I could meet somebody in this circumstance. We could have this kind of relationship. I can write about that. And so many other people have written about the same thing. Hang on, let me do this real quick, and we'll get right back. Oh, somebody wrote monkey. Anyway, this is Genesis Science Fiction Radio, a service of the BlackScienceFictionSociety.com website. This is the March 22nd, 2013 edition, and we're talking to Ms. Erica Hughes, who is, she's as busy as anyone I have read about as far as all the things that she's done. Let me ask you this. What are you working on now that we can look forward to, let's say, in the next year or so, to come out from you, that you're working on creatively?
I am writing, and it should be out within the next month or two.
Okay.
A new novel, and it's science fiction.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a science, it's a romance. One of my friends, she always says, every story is a romance. So I shouldn't say romance science fiction, but that's what it is. It has a really interesting plot. I don't want to say anything about it until I'm getting close to hitting the live button.
Well, no, we won't know until two weeks after you've written it. I mean, we won't know anything about it till then. But you do have that is a project that you're anticipating finishing fairly soon, correct?
That's right, and so I'm dedicating this weekend to a couple of chapters. I try to write throughout the week, but sometimes we're just beat. So, but if I have the energy, I'm 100% in it. So that's on the horizon, and I have to redo 2020 AD. It's a long, terrible story, but I do. And so,
well,
but
first of all, tell everybody about 2020 AD. About the project.
2020 AD is a animated movie that I made. It's feature length. It's Machinima 3D, and that it's not Machinima uses a real time video editing engine to render the movie. It's kind of like a video game almost, because everything is happening as you create the movie.
Okay.
The graphics are low res. It's not like something you can make with DAZ 3D or some other high res program.
Okay.
So some people don't like the animation
Mm-hmm.
from Movie Storm. I use Movie Storm to create it, and I did it on a whim. I was writing articles on Screenwriters Daily about animation and pitching a cartoon because I used to write some animated screenplays, and I went through this whole process where I learned how to pitch them, and I was able to pitch them to some TV studios and just my whole experiences from that, and I just, turned them into some articles so other people can learn from it. Those articles became very big, and people would read them. Even now, I get a lot of emails about them. And so I just started doing a lot more with the animation. At the time, this was maybe like in 2008, before I started working on 2020 AD or even thought that I would start doing animation.
Okay.
So that wasn't a career goal for me. It wasn't a hobby for me. It wasn't anything. It was just I used to have artists draw the characters that I wanted, and then I would pitch my cartoon to a TV network. So I wasn't into the animation at all. But one day, after the popularity of the article, and literally that was the only how to pitch a cartoon article on the web.
Mm-hmm.
The only one. Up until maybe like a year or two ago, it was still probably one of the few articles that taught how to do that.
Sure.
So I said, well, you know what? I need to, because I would get questions from people like, what kind of software, animation software should I use? What would you use? So I decided that I was going to write an article about animation software, and that I would go and I would ask for a demo copy of the software, and then I would test the software out. And back then I was working at Sony, so I knew how to edit a movie, and it was something that I learned on the job. And I knew how to make music, using the audio software that Sony made at the time.
Programmable synthesizer type software?
Like SoundForge.
Okay, sure, yeah.
Acid, that type of stuff. And that was the division of Sony that I was working for. And we used to have these training classes and stuff where we learned how to use it every week, and I benefited a lot from it. So I said, I'm really good with, I know I'm really good with computers. I could jump in and learn how to use some animation software, and then I could tell people which ones were the easiest to learn. And I said I'll make a little short demo using some of my movie editing skills that I learned when I was at Sony, and then, go from there. So I started testing different animation programs. Then I stumbled across Movie Studio and Movie Storm, and I said, you know what? Let me make a 15-minute movie and see what happens. So I talked to some writer friends, and I said, hey, can you guys provide some voice work? Gave them a screenplay. First, I didn't want to write one, but they insisted on it. Gave them the script, and it just got bigger and bigger and bigger. And I just ended up writing it as it went along, or I would see that the movie needed something. And, and so it just got bigger. And then next, a year later, it was 1 hour and 20 minutes. And that was it.
And where can people see this now?
Yeah. Actually, I put like an early cut of it on YouTube. So if you Google 2020 AD by E. Hughes, you can watch like an early version of it on YouTube. That's
great.
Yeah, so.
All right, let me do this. We're about an hour into the show, and what we like to do is, I get to interview you for the first hour, and then for the second hour, we take questions from people who are both chatting and who have dialed into the show, and think that, I haven't done a very good job because I didn't ask their question. So now, as you can tell from all the noise in the background, everybody's unmuted, and some people have very noisy homes. I would like to open it up, and if it's okay with you, Erica, do you mind answering some questions from some of the people here?
Sure, and I told my kids to shut up. That's why it's so quiet in here.
I usually bury people in the backyard if they're too noisy. Does anybody have any questions for Erica and would like to lead off?
This is Jay, the admin. I wanted to ask you, well, I have a couple. While I have you here, how do you pitch a cartoon?
Oh, it's so long. Basically, you would need three things. You would need a pilot script, and we're talking about pitching it for a TV or a network, network, or some other producer. I mean, it's other mediums that this would apply to. But if you're doing a TV show, you would have a Bible, you would have your pilot script, and you would have your animation. And any other marketing devices you can use. You can make your animation to go with it to show them what the product would look like. A Bible is a 16 is it's kind of an outline of the show. You need to show that there is enough material for a year and a half worth of episodes. So you would write episode 1, a summary of each episode for a year and a half.
How many episodes is that?
Roughly, about 16 episodes. On the low end of that number, 13 to 16, but 16 is what you want to aim for. And you would write this in present tense, and you would just tell the beginning, middle, and end of what should happen in that episode. And it doesn't have to be very long, but it should be detailed enough. You should know who the characters are, who will be in the episode, and what the outcome of the episode will be. And then your pilot script, if it's a half-hour show, maybe, 23 pages, because you have to, leave room for commercials. If it's a hour long, probably 43 minutes or so, 43 to 48 minutes or so, 48 pages. Each page, and the reason why it's confused, I use pages and minutes interchangeably is because one page in a screenplay equals to 1 minute of screen time.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what it is. And then you have your character bios that should be included. And usually what I do is I put a picture of the character with a bio underneath it. Then you have your letter introducing yourself and your project. And you want it to be very colorful and something that they want to make. If you have a toy prototype, you include that. If you have animation to go with it, you can include that too.
Awesome. Okay. Well, I'm going to let somebody else ask the question. Because, me, I'll have a list and talk your head off. Let's see here. Anyone else?
I hate when that happens. No, I really do. You got people waiting, and you say, well, does anybody have any questions? And then it's quiet, and nobody wants to jump in. And I spoke I questioned for an hour. I don't want to hog the whole thing, but I do have a question for you. I mean, how much collaborative work have you done where you had to work with maybe one other person or a team of people, and how did that go for you if you managed to do so?
The only time that I've worked with other people, it was a little bit of a disaster. We actually, I have a business partner. His name is Safo Kennedy. He lives in California, and he makes movies. He went out there to go to film school, even though he had already been making movies. And he has a movie that he was in a movie that did surprisingly well. If you look it up on Amazon, you see it, and it's kind of like a hood movie. And I met Safo in Chicago before I moved to Madison. And he and we were working on some film projects and some screenplays. And around 2003, I was up here, and, back then I was really into the script stuff. And they were in the process of making one of my movies. It was called Tambourine. And someone convinced me not to do it. They just gave me a very ugly picture of what was happening on the set. and we hadn't signed any paperwork yet, and so I pulled out. But Safo and I are really close, even now, and we work a lot together on different things. Sometimes I'll write scripts for him and things like that. But that was an experience where I had a lot of people involved, and at one point some guy had taken a script because everybody loved the script and everybody wanted a piece of it. That's what I was told. Everybody had their hands in a pot. You know how someone might come along, and I'm here in Wisconsin, and I can only visit every now and then to participate in person. Otherwise, it's phone calls. So somebody gave me a very ugly picture of what was going on and with the actors and infighting and people not doing this and people doing that and people trying to take over your screenplay. And I was like, give my script back. That's it. I don't care. Leave me alone. No, but that was one situation where something was turned into a movie and I didn't like what I was seeing. But Safo still has the movie now and he still plans to make it sometime in the near future.
Okay.
I was good at that time.
Now, when you put your package together and you are, you're getting ready to go and pitch it, who are you primarily pitching it directly to? Are you pitching it to money people? Are you pitching it to, people who are supposed to pass judgment on creative? When you put your package together, how do you focus it, and what's your intent?
When you're pitching to the money people, you're kind of taking on the role of a producer because you're finding your own budget for it.
Okay.
But if you're pitching to someone, you want to pitch to a producer or you want to pitch to a director. And I'll give you an example. I once pitched to someone at Cartoon Network. I almost said her name, but I want to put her name out there like that. And she produces a very, very popular cartoon. If I said the name, you'd be like, oh, really? And it was really funny because I bought this book, and it was called The Hollywood Creative Directory. Now, this is in 2003. I think they're just online now, but they had a physical book, and I purchased it. I bought it from Amazon. And what it is it's a directory, like a Yellow Pages, except it has all the producers and Hollywood people in it. So basically, if I looked in there and I saw Ben Stiller's production company, his phone number and email address is in there. So I could say, I'm going to pitch this to him. This seems like something that his production company does. So in this case, I saw her name and that she worked with Cartoon Network, and that's who I pitched to. So the producer is the person who finds money for your project, and they do a few other things as well, but they help you find the budget and kind of oversee, some of the corporate end and some of the corporate stuff involved in it. And I ended up pitching it to her over her voicemail. I was just so brazen back then. That's just, people don't do stuff like that. And the assumption was because I had their phone numbers that someone who was inside the industry was recommending
given it
me.
To you. Sure.
Had given it to me, so she's probably thinking, hey, one of my friends may have gave her my number. So I had this book, and I was just calling people. And there was another thing that, so that's who you would pitch to. If you want to pitch it to an actor and they love your work, they might find a producer for them, especially if it's an A-list actor. I love the script so much, I decided I wanted to make the movie, so I talked to this person and that person. So it depends on, who you want to talk to about it. If you know that, you're making something that's good for Cartoon Network, pitch it to someone at Cartoon Network. If you have a screenplay for Denzel Washington, pitch it to Denzel Washington. They used to have a thing called the Players Directory.
Right.
And basically,
I remember that.
Yeah, and you could just call and say, can I have Denzel Washington's contact information? Sure, that number is blah, 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 blah. And that was it. They didn't ask who you were. They just give it to you.
A good investment to that effort, if somebody wants to find people like that and find the contacts, who their representation is to go ahead and pay for a IMDb Pro subscription, because then you are allowed access to some of those parts of IMDb which tell you who represents Denzel Washington or who represents Samuel L. Jackson, things like that, so that you could skip a few steps in trying to contact them. Now, of course, all of these people have very, very efficient and very effective gatekeepers, but that's up to you. You have to come to them with something that's compelling enough that they'll pass it along.
Bingo. And I actually have an IMDb Pro account, and I do use it. I do use
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And they'll have email addresses, phone numbers. IMDb is the easiest one to get the information from actually now. But back then, at least I didn't use IMDb Pro for that reason. I don't even think I was really using IMDb. I have an account on IMDb Pro too that I use because I have an IMDb page on there from 2020 AD.
Does anybody else have any questions?
Could you tell us about this psycho girlfriend deal?
Oh no. Think of Jodi Arias. You know what that is? I decided sometime last year that I wanted to end of last year that I wanted to do something like, and don't you all steal my idea. I don't like that. No, but I wanted to do just think like the Twilight Zone where you have different episodes and they're all surreal. I kind of wanted to do a DVD with just different animated cartoons and everything on it is surreal and weird and, kind of trippy.
Okay.
And these would be all of your solo stories, or would you solicit other people to write kind of in the same genre, or how were you going to do that?
I actually did ask a few writers if they wanted to give me a story that I can, direct with the animation,
Sure.
So, or my own stories. And I have 3 so far. The one, and I haven't even finished the Psycho Girlfriend project. That was just me kind of visualizing it.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm going to put a little bit more in there, and then that'll be one of the stories. And then I have another one, and the title won't stay the same. It was Dream Reamer, and I already know how it's going to end. That's also one of the videos.
Right, those can be found on her YouTube account.
Yeah, so I plan to put together a collection of, weird stories. Very Twilight Zone.
So sort of like a 3D cosmic slop.
Yeah. Oh, I love cosmic slop.
I think Tales from the Hood kind of revisited that maybe 10 years later.
Right. They should have made more of those cosmic, because they had just 3 episodes in Cosmic Slop. They should have had more. At least those are the only 3 that I saw.
Oh, awesome stuff.
Yeah.
The one where the aliens came and wanted all the dark-skinned people for some reason, and they wouldn't tell why.
Well, that was based on a short story that I've read before. I think 2 of them were. I haven't seen it since the late early 2000s or late 90s, so I have to see.
It was some really, really good stuff. I think there was at one point there was before Netflix made the changes to their account. They let go of a lot of things that they had on there, and I can't remember the name of it, but there was an Asian film like that. It was Digital Love or Digital something, and they used the similar most of the actors were the same, but it was completely different stories. And they had like 4 or 5 stories on one, 4 or 5 short films on one DVD.
Yeah, see, I like stuff like that. That's the kind of stuff that I find really interesting.
Cool.
Just, being able to tell a story and, telling it in that way.
Okay, what?
Go ahead.
No, go ahead. You got it.
Well, what I was going to ask was, since you kind of gravitated away from the movie industry, have you kind of entrenched yourself in getting the writing done, doing most of the writing for, to get books out, to get short stories out? We already know how you feel about how other people feel about your poetry, but again, I don't think you should discount that, because those kinds of things people are going to look for when they look for you. They're going to want to know more about you. But are you going to focus more on just the writing ahead instead of film projects?
I'm definitely focusing on novel writing, but I love animation so much. So that's kind of like my second thing. Those two, you know, I don't want to call them hobbies. My brain isn't functioning tonight because I'm so tired. But you know, animation and novel writing, those are the two things that I primarily like to focus on now. Not so much, and you have to write a screenplay to do the animation.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but I don't write screenplays anymore for other people, to pitch to other people, and you know, it's really for me and my projects now.
Sure.
So.
Would you ever invite, or would you entertain collaborating with other people?
Absolutely. And you know, if somebody wanted to write something and I make the animated movie for it, I would love that.
Cool. I think that's going to make somebody out there happier. Let me.
I got a question.
Oh, go ahead. Sure.
Yeah, this is Will Porter. How y'all doing this evening?
Hello.
I came in. Hey, what's up, Admin? I came in late, but I was here just in time to hear you talking about, you know, how there was a possibility they had someone you had pitched a script to and might have lifted some of your stuff. I'm glad you brought that up, because I get people that send me scripts all the time, and I pretty much tell them, I don't take unsolicited stuff. Sometimes what I will do, if I'll tell them to, format me out 5 pages of the best part of the script they figure, and what I'll do is I've got people that that like to read scripts, and I'll let them read it, and if they give me a good review, I might take a look at it. But then, even then, I always make sure I let them know, look, I'm not promising to do anything for them or anything like that. But, every now and then I'll see a script that'll come through, and, I'll actually take time to read it. And some of them are pretty good, or some of them are, are so-so. But I always try to make sure that I at least, give them something positive to go off of, from there. But most times, though, I just don't read them because, I've already got, I'm a scriptwriter myself, and I've got a couple of people I write with regularly. So, it's like I don't necessarily need any extra stuff. But, you don't want to just completely cut yourself from ideas. But the main thing is, a lot of times people send you stuff, and they're just so desperate. They, please make me famous. I know you know what I'm talking about. It's like, so it's like, believe me, I feel their pain because there's plenty of times I've been in their position, and I'm sure I'll be there again at some time or another. But the main thing, I'm glad you brought that up because it's all about protecting yourself. And one of the things I wanted to ask you was, what about how do you protect yourself? Do you have representation, a lawyer, and all the other stuff?
Yeah, I pretty much understand the industry pretty well. And I work for a law firm, and I'm not a lawyer, but I understand other legal gray areas very well. So for me personally, yes, I do understand a lot of what's going on and what I need to do. Even if I write my own contract for something that I'm doing with someone, I know what to say in that contract so that I'm not hurting myself and nobody's taking advantage of me. So, yeah, me personally, yeah. I think that someone else who may be going into the business for the first time, they should always copyright their work, register it with the Writers Guild, and that's like I think $35 or something like that.
It's not very expensive at all.
No, not expensive at all. And if you copyright online, through copyright.gov, that's only about $30 or $35. So you just want to protect yourself in that way. And if something happens, you have some legal ground to pursue, that person or group that may have infringed on your intellectual rights.
Exactly.
But I get those emails, as the gentleman was saying, he gets stuff, and someone said, please help me. And I'm like, that's not a pitch. Sometimes I do, because it's just awkward to get that. And it's like, I'm writing a cartoon about a bean who falls in love with a stalk, and I really want to make this. And can you please, pretty please, with sugar on top, help me? And by the time I get to sugar on top, I've already clicked out, and, and it's hard to take it seriously. You have to actually, the Internet is there. It's free education. You can go out and you can read stuff, but sometimes you may not know what words to look for. You may not you want to say, how do I send this to someone? But if you search, how do I send my screenplay to someone, you may not get the right answers in the search results. But you want to do some research before you're sending things out to people, because they may not take your request seriously, and you may have be onto something. You may have nice, something that you've written that's really good. And I do help people from time to time. Someone may say, I'll get emails, and they're all through Screenwriters Daily. It's always someone who may have read something of Screenwriters Daily, and they have a question. And so I'll work with people. There was one guy, he sent me a project, and he sent everything out in his first email, the animation, just everything. And I thought, you know what, that's not good. Because what if I was a pariah? What if I was a bad person? Someone could take your stuff. So that was the first thing that I said. I said, you want to fill it out first. Don't send everything at once. Just send a little information, enough to entice that person, enough to engage that person so they can respond and ask for it. And we kind of corresponded for a little while, and he got what he needed. He was happy with the information, and he was able to go on and do whatever it was that he wanted to do with it.
And that person was Steven Spielberg, and the rest is history. Oh, no, I'm sorry. I got ahead of the story. I apologize.
You mean Steven Spielberg, not Spielberg. No.
oh, yeah, Glurg, yeah.
But,
oh, no, go ahead. What were you saying?
But no, and that's pretty much it. And I used to send those emails out, when I was first learning to write and I was pitching. And every time, whenever I would talk to someone, they would give me something I could use in a conversation. Even if they're saying no, I would just say, well, what should a person do? I would ask them if they ever wanted to be read by someone, and then they'll tell you. I had one lady at, I don't know if it was Warner Brothers. It was like a major studio, and I was very brazen back then. If you told me don't send me your script, I used to send it anyway. I was one of those people that they really didn't want sending them things because I was so brazen and just like, I don't care, I'm going to send it anyway. They're going to love this when they see it. And you shouldn't do that.
No.
But I ended up learning from the rejection. But I remember one reader, and she was at like a major studio, and she kind of broke down on the phone. Oh, this is very stressful for me, and we're under so much pressure to find talent, and if we bring the wrong thing in, we can lose our job, and people don't really want to talk to you. They just want you to read their stuff and get them, to the next person. They don't really care about you as a person. I'm like, oh, wow.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and so I try not to approach people that way.
Yeah, And I mean, you're dead right, because I dealt with that shortly while I was still working out in California, and I was fairly brazen back then too, and I took a few courses over at the Sony Training Institute, so that's like right there in Burbank. So in the meantime, while I was there, I was basically flinging stuff, in any direction I thought it might stick, and pretty much ran to the same thing, but it was like you were saying, it was a good experience because it just let me know that you really need to know some people. You need to, or not so much know some people, but at least know somebody that can at least make some introductions, or you can get in to just make some network and make some connections. And you can't really do that when you're just throwing stuff at everybody. And
exactly,
hoping,
and you want to actually be genuine. When you talk to people, and that was one of the things. That's something that they encounter all the time. And one of the questions I used to ask myself is, okay, let's say you sending your script to, we'll just use Steven Spielberg again. And you say, hey, look at my screenplay. Right, he doesn't need it. He knows. You know how many writers this man knows?
Exactly. Oh,
he doesn't have to go to you to get a screenplay. So it is, and they tend to look within their circle.
Right.
For talent, and if they need a script.
I deal with that too. People, because they know I've done some action stuff. So they're especially like people who want to do especially like video and stuff like that. They want to do fan stuff or Marvel and this, that, and the other. And I tell them, I said, dude, don't pitch to Marvel because they've got some world-class writers already working for them. And if they wanted to cast their nets, out into the wide world, they can cast them so far that you might be able to get caught up in that, but don't even. My thing is, unless you know somebody that knows somebody specifically, at Marvel that you can make a direct connection with, don't waste your time.
Bingo. If you're not making that connection. That's why networking is so important and knowing how to network. And then, I had one guy, he had I'm trying not to give away too much information about him, but he had a toy product that he was selling. I mean, it's a great toy. And he wanted me to help him put a package together. He wanted to an idea that I had, basically. He contacted me through email. I noticed from the beginning he was a little pushy. He said, if you really want to work with me, you will write me back in 3 days. So I kind of, or within this time, because I'm a very busy man, and I don't have time, blah, blah, blah. So I just ignored it. That was the first thing I did. I just ignored it. Then I got another email, do you really want to work with me or not? I got annoyed. So I wrote back, said, no, I don't want to work with you on anything. I don't know what you, I don't know you, for one. I don't know what you're offering. What is this about? And then he told me, and he ended up having a great product that benefited children who were in children's hospitals. So these stuffed animals that he had books for them, a beautiful website for the product, proceeds from the store from the dolls went to children's hospitals. He had a great backstory on it. Had been in a newspaper. And I'm like, okay, this looks like something based on the charitable aspects of this project I want to be involved in. But the way that he approached was just so wrong. So I ended up taking a role in his company. And this is how, all of you can create opportunities for yourself, just with the experience that you have.
See, now you get the you get the pig that lays the golden eggs. I just get the pig. I had a dude pitch me a script one time, and this was like relatively early. My company, we just got finished making our own film, first independent film, and I get the script. This guy, I don't feel, how you've been trying to protect people. I don't feel bad. I'll snitch on it. His idea was about he wanted to make an old school Japanese monster flick. Okay, like the old Godzilla stuff, right?
Oh, nice.
So I'm like, okay, I can kind of run with this. So I'm reading through this. I told him, he sent me 5 pages. So I'm reading through this script, and right off the bat, it's like, it's not plagiarized, but I mean, all the characters in it, it's like a fan piece. I mean, he's using, he's not using Godzilla. He's using like Mothra or Rodan or whatever, something like that, right? I mean, but obviously, these characters that come from that, from that series of films. And so I'm telling them, dude, this is, so your script isn't bad, but it's not going to fly. I said, because I guarantee you, God, I can't remember the name of that company, Toho company. Yeah, they're the one they're the ones that made all those all those Godzilla flicks. I said, Toe's not going to let you run with this thing, without running it past them first and getting their approval. So I said, so your best bet is take the premise that you got and just rewrite it with some different monsters. I said, there's no reason why you shouldn't be able to do that. Well, he got all upset and started name dropping, and one of the names he kept dropping was John Malkovich. I'm like, so? I'm trying to be nice, but I'm telling him, dude, okay, even if you do have John Malkovich attached to the project, which I know he didn't, because there's no way, everything I've seen about John Malkovich, it never struck me that he was the type that would go along with a project that he knows damn well, he's my friend, that it's obvious, copyright infringement, So I know he's not going to go for that. So anyway, this guy's steady dropping this name, and he said, well, we got the funding, and blah, blah, blah. I said, well, then what do you need me for? And he says, well, you're a producer. And I said, yes, I am. I said, but the thing is, I'm not going to produce something that's going to, that I'm not going to be able to get errors and omissions insurance for, because they're going to look at me like I'm a fool, because I would be if I tried to roll up with this movie trying to get funding for it. So
I think that's a fairly common problem. You have a lot of people out there who want to write screenplays, or they want to get a movie done, or they want to write a book, or they want to do a comic, or they want to do a cartoon, and essentially, they think they can do a couple of Google searches, and they feel that that's the extent of the due diligence that they have to do. And I think that one of the reasons why your classes on how to get published, the wrapping it up and getting it out there, and the websites that you've done, I think, Erica, the reason why those are so popular is because they do give people a start on doing that due diligence. I mean, like Wolf was saying, you have somebody who has an idea, but they're so wedded to the idea that the realistic concerns of getting the job done, getting something made, don't impinge on their psyche whatsoever. It's all ego and no legwork, and that's a tough thing. That's a tough thing because the guy who was rude to you, who said, "Hey, I've got the full Monty here. You're going to want to work with me." Okay, that was a lucky happenstance. It doesn't happen like that very often. It's so seldom that it happens like that this is a great story for you to tell. But how many times? It didn't end well. Well, how many times does somebody hit you up and say, "I've got X that everybody wants, and it's going to make millions of dollars"? I mean, every other person thinks that. When Oprah Winfrey was doing her book club, and she had her first the previous show, and she was she had her book club. Every single black author that I met in Chicago was convinced that they were going to get Oprah to profile their book. And with no attribution, with nothing. I mean, they were just convinced. Well, my book, Oprah's going to want to do my book. And I hated to break their hearts. I said, well, first of all, Oprah doesn't read any books. She's got a white lady reading all her books. What? And I said, second of all, Oprah doesn't take any chances. She got burned twice by people who lied in their books. That's why she chose Charles Dickens. And I said, this is a woman who's managing her career. She doesn't need you, and she doesn't want you. So, when people come to other people to try to pitch something creative, if they don't do their due diligence, if they can't demonstrate that they have mastery of what it takes to sell to somebody else, that's a tough road to hoe if you get somebody like that calling you. Sometimes you have to let them down easy. Sometimes you just want to say, why did I pick up the phone? Why did I answer that email? But it's tough out there, especially for publishing and especially for making movies, television shows, what have you. It's so hard to get anything done. And one of the things, if I went back to teaching, one of the things that I would say is do your due diligence. Have your package ready. I'm really interested in taking a closer look at the kinds of things that you do for your classwork, because I think that anybody who wants to publish could benefit from it. Do you have more? Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I do. I can send you some literature from the class, and one of the things that I'm trying to get across to the students is that it's not a matter. You know how long it takes to format the actual book, that part of my course?
Right.
We're going, like, for example, next week we're going to actually format their books. And the ones who aren't quite finished yet, we're going to download a free domain book, from, like, Gutenberg.org, and we're going to format that so they can get practice. But the amount of time it takes to actually format their manuscript takes 5 minutes.
Yeah.
That part of the course, 5 minutes. The rest of the course, I'm basically teaching them everything that they will encounter. Everything they will encounter from beginning to end. What to expect. It's not a matter of just pressing the print button, or publish button, and saying, okay, I'm done. Everybody can come out in droves and the millions and buy. No, it doesn't happen that way. There's things that you need to know about marketing, things that you need to, all kind of disasters that you can run into, and the good things that you'll encounter. And I share success stories with them. It's really a great class to take, I would say, not just because I teach it, but they're really getting everything that they need to know. And I'm almost afraid that I'm scaring them off because there's so much information involved that I always feel like I'm going to scare them off. But, it hasn't happened yet. So
for everybody who listens to this show and listens to the podcast who's in central Wisconsin, or even close enough that you could drive, you could do lots worse than to take this class. Yeah,
you can. And we're actually thinking about making it available online. I have to talk to the administrators at the school for that. And it was my suggestion initially, because I didn't even know that there were that many writers here in Wisconsin and locally. As many, enough to fill a classroom, every term. But there are. But I figure that other people outside of Madison, there's a lot of people out there that need the course. So my goal is to make it, because we do have the technology, of course, to offer the online class. And she wanted to know how well my class is going to do before we went to that step. Well, the class has done very well. We have, we're filled to capacity. So we should be able to make that step. But I think if it happens, it probably would happen in the fall or maybe even next spring, if it does. I am teaching a summer class, but it may happen in fall or spring if it does. I don't see it happening that quickly, but it could. I just don't know because I haven't done the online course before.
Well, you can keep us posted. Drop in, let us know, give us all the information, and obviously everybody, at least who visits BlackScienceFictionSociety.com website, will at least have the opportunity to see that the opportunity exists to take your class. I think that would be great.
And there's a lot of talent on, Black science fiction. I look at some people's stuff and I'm like, wow, that's a really good idea. Or that's a really good concept. And there's a lot of talent out there. What I'd like to see people do is actually, as you say, do their due diligence and be ready to push that publish button. Sometimes we sit on stuff for a long time, because I know people who are working on that one project, and they've been working on it since, 2010. It's finished. It's ready to go. And I'm like, when are you going to, bring this thing out? When are you going to, go live and make it public? Oh, I'm just, doing this with it and I'm tweaking. Come on, come out and just, do it. That's what I like to do. I like to do it. And you have to make it happen for yourself. As far as, like, pitching and, that's all fine and dandy. That's good. But if you can find your own budget, produce your own stuff, that's wonderful. I did 2020 AD completely alone. Other than the people who did the voice work, on the movie editing, all the sound editing, every piece of that movie I did by myself. Took about a year and a half. And then I went ahead when it was done and I hit the for sale button, But there is one story that I will share with you guys, and it's been and this is why I'm doing 2020 AD over. Here's the thing. There was a company that worked with Movie Storm software company that sold licensing rights to their music to Movie Storm. So, of course, Movie Storm put up the announcement. I was excited because these were, these soundtracks were great. For me, one thing I like about 2020 AD is the music. It just went so well with everything. And, I think I did a couple of songs that I made and put in the movie, but a lot of those were licensed too. Mm-hmm. And the way the Movie Storm advertised it was, this is royalty-free, fully licensed music. You can use it in whatever you want, whether it's commercial project or personal project. So I bought that license. I was like, this is a great pack.
Sure.
Bought it and put the movie, I would put clips of the movie on YouTube, never a problem. Monetize them, that wasn't a problem. And then just last year, some companies started making a claim on the music. And I was like, what is this? So we went back and forth with the company. I did. And I learned that they were now making claims on the music. They claimed that Movie Storm never had the right to give that music away fully licensed, royalty-free.
Sure.
So I contacted Movie Storm, as did a few other people. They wrote back, said, no, it's great. We just, we're licensing the video games now. But if people are still using it, that's great. Let us know how they're using it. If it ends up on TV, great. We love to see our soundtracks and movies, blah, blah, blah. So fast forward a little bit later, to still make it, if they actually, what Movie Storm put out there was, they said, if it's from Movie Storm, let them know, and they'll remove the copyright claim from YouTube so you can monetize. Months later, now they're saying, no, we're not going to do that at all. We never said they could use it to make money. They can only use it in personal projects.
Had they sold the catalog to someone else? Is that what happened, or did the actual original people renege on what they had said earlier?
And I don't want to because you could say something that can get you into trouble legally. So I don't want to say they reneged, but that's how I felt. I felt like
Sure.
they reneged. And even if you and Movie Storm didn't work the agreement out
right.
the way that you should have, because I bought it, that music pack as a customer, I don't think you should penalize me because your deal didn't work out with them. That's how I looked at it. So I went back and forth with someone from their company. And these emails were getting contentious, and we're negotiating. This is 2 months ago where we're going back and forth. And I said, look, this is how it was offered to me. I showed him the information on Movie Storm.
Right.
This is promised to us commercial, fully licensed. Now, Sony, they sell music loops. And I don't know if you guys are familiar with music loops, but it's just like pieces of music that you can put together, edit together to make a song. And so I use that to make my soundtracks. And I can do a really effective job at that. I've made, I think I had some music online. It was like under amberskyproductions.webs.com or something. You could actually listen to it. So I could use it. I know how to make really good soundtracks. I could have done that with my own movie. But I like theirs so much. I'm just like, okay, I'll do some of my own and I'll use some of theirs. Totally regret it. And then, I had a computer crash in 2010 where I lost all of my original files. So some of that stuff in 2020 AD can no longer be edited because of this freak accident. A lot of it, I would say about 40% of the movie, I don't have the files to go in and edit anymore. So the ones that are connected to the music, how do you separate the music out of that? Because all I have is the footage that I rendered. So it's a huge inconvenience for me. So what am I doing now? I'm taking the entire soundtrack. Not just the soundtrack, the voice work, everything. Just stripping it completely out of the movie. Now I have to go in, take all the voice files, voiceover, and re-add it to the movie and sync it so that it's, line it up so that it's not out of sync.
Sure.
Then add my music to it. It's a huge process.
Well, but you know what? That's the thing. You know, you live and learn, and nobody wants to be sued, and nobody wants to have somebody coming behind them saying, "Hey, you stole our work," because that doesn't help your reputation any. But you know, that was the reason why I asked the question about did they sell their catalog. Oftentimes that'll happen.
I think that's what happened. I think that's what happened because I know that they make music for video games now, and the music is popular, and people were, you know, they were uploading it to YouTube. So they just put that claim even on people who made the license. So what I want to say is double check whenever you buy something that's licensed, like music. When I worked for Sony, we would get, you know, calls from people saying, are these loops really, you know, royalty-free? And we would say, yes, they're royalty-free. Do you mean I could use them in anything? I don't have to give you guys credit? Yes, we said that it's royalty-free, fully licensed, do whatever you want with it. We don't care. And I would get annoyed by those calls, but now I know why they did it. So always do it, but do it in writing.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but the main thing, too, is to keep all your, like you did, like keep all your documentation. Because, you know, my company, we use Sony stuff a lot. So, you know, we've got, you know, we're in the same boat. You know, a lot of most of the stuff I do, when we do, if we don't hire out somebody to do a soundtrack for us, you know, we do it ourselves, and a lot of times we use, you know, Sony stuff. So, you know, we keep all those licensing agreements and stuff, you know, so if it comes down to, you know, something happens and, you know, we end up having to go to court over something, you know, we have that documentation. That is your protection. But yeah, you definitely want to make sure you keep all that stuff, because if you don't, you know, you don't have often you don't have grounds to stand on, you know, if you have to go to court. There was a question I was going to ask you, and that little bit made me forget. Dang it. Here's a completely different question. I'd like to ask you about your process. Now, when you, because on the BSFS page, I have a page called the Masters of 3X, and I talk a lot about you know, script writing and things like that. And one thing I'd like to know, I try to ask every script writer, just, you know, kind of get a general consensus. But when you write your scripts, are you a straightforward, you know, a straight writer, or are you a cards person, or are you a notes person?
I just write the script straight through. You know, I don't make notes, or I don't do outlines. I don't do any of that, because a lot of stuff, you know, I'll get an idea one day. You know, I might be in my room, you know, listening to music, and then I'll just kind of go into this daydream. And then I can start seeing the characters or the story unfolding in my mind. If I don't write it right then and there, I'm going to lose it. Yeah. It's gone forever. I will lose the essence of it. So I'll start writing. So I'll write that initial summary, or I'll even write. Sometimes I'll just hear dialogue. So I'll hurry to a computer. I'll sit and I'll write that dialogue out, and then write a story around it.
Okay,
it's very weird.
But no, not necessarily. But you still write. You basically write at least a premise and treatment for it, right?
A treatment, I do it after I'm done with the script. Yeah, see, I'm a really bad example. You. I do not
start before the horse.
I know. And some people, they'll write out their whole treatment, then they'll write out the synopsis, and then I write my whole entire screenplay, because one of the things I've noticed that happens to me is when I write something, it never turns out the way that I planned. It's like the characters, they take on they take on a life of their own, and the story sometimes it'll go in a completely different direction than I intended.
Well, one thing about that is I learned that from making documentaries, because you know that happens. And when you make documentaries, that's the process. It's, you know, it's 100% of the time what you start out with, what you have planned will not be what ends up on film. So when I run into that in you know, when I'm writing scripts, or even novels for that matter, you know, I don't even fight it anymore, because it's not worth trying to fight it. You just let that go, and 10 times out of 10 it's better than what you thought of in the first place. So, but but that's amazing though, because I mean, for me, like when I'm writing scripts, because I go through a lot of that process. You know, you get that idea. I get what you know, people get earworms, you know, with songs and stuff. I get brain worms, you know, with these with a certain idea, it'll be sitting there chewing on the back of my skull. And it's like, okay. So the only way I can get it to stop is start writing it down. And usually what I do is I just write out whatever I'm thinking about at the time. I say, okay, this happens. This person says something. Oh, this, and then I just kind of dump to a brain dump. And a lot of times I'll just walk away from it, for a minute or two. And then I'll come back and I'll take a good look at it just to even see if it's really a good idea. Because, sometimes you have a great idea, at the moment, and then you take a good look at it, later, and it's like, maybe that's not so hot. But then, but if I see it's something I can run with, then, I'll actually, what I'll do is I'll write a treatment for it, or at least try to nail it down in a premise. I figure if I, just what I got going, if I can knock it, if I can just say, in that short paragraph, what my idea is, a lot of times I can tell, okay, do I really need to continue on with this, and then I'll write my treatment. It's like, once I got my treatment, then I can write the script, because a lot of people, because you're not the only one I know that just goes straight into it. One of my collaborators, she is, but she's been writing scripts a long, long time. I don't think she ever wrote. I don't think she ever wrote a treatment, so I don't think she ever really got into that. But for me, I have to have that basic foundation, because a lot of times, though, like you were saying, how you start going off on tangents. Yeah, you start drifting, and me, when I start drifting, I drift bad. I mean, it's like. I'm in the boat, no navigational tools. I'm just out there. The stars are gone. I'm just, it's fog. So I'll know. After a while, I'll take a look at what I'm writing. I'm like, where the hell am I in this thing? So if I have a treatment, then I can usually bang that out, pretty good. And then once I get back into it, when I start looking for plot holes, then I'll start rewriting stuff. But
so you're more organized when you write. You do it in order, and everybody, their process is different. We all have a different process, and that process, it works for us. It may not work for somebody else, but it works. It's like, okay, that works for me, and that works for you. Was it a certain book that got you into? For me, it was a Screenwriter's Bible by Dave Trottier. I read that book in the late 90s. And it was like one of the best books. And it was just a screenwriting book, but it was so engaging and so much fun to read. I just wanted to write a screenplay. And I think I had watched Star Wars or something. And I want to write movies now. And I got inspired.
You did. For me, it was, I remember earlier I said I went to the Sony Training Institute. Now, I had trained and worked in for broadcast style television for a while, and we had to know how to write scripts, and when I was initially going through my initial school for that, we were fortunate enough to have people who went to USC used to have a program for the military for their where they would bring in their cameramen and stuff to learn filmmaking from Hollywood style, filmmakers and stuff. So by the time I got around to those guys, they were, I was catching the last ones as they were, all about to retire. But, the thing was they really emphasized, all that stuff about, writing scripts, the traditional way. So I was fortunate enough to catch them. And then when I got to the Sony Training Institute, they broke it down for us really, hard and fast. And it just kind of reinforced what I learned. But as far as I'm trying to remember I ended up really getting serious into scripts after I went to film school for graduate school, and it was funny because the class that I took was actually it was like a freshman class. Not freshman. It was a junior class, junior level class, but I was in graduate school to have to take it, so I couldn't get credit for it, but I had to take it anyway, even though I'd been writing scripts for a while. But still, it was a good experience, because I learned how to. Because by that time, the software, had come around for script writing software. So, I'd known how to do it, the traditional way, but using the software, change. I don't know if you use script writing software, but that changes everything, when you write with that stuff. So learning how to do it with that, kind of got me into it. But you said I was organized. It doesn't seem that way to me because I see people like Ridley Scott, and when if you ever get if I don't know if you're a big DVD watcher, but I love if a DVD doesn't have those special features on there where they show you how they did stuff, to me it's not even worth buying. But you know what I mean. So I was
sometimes the making of is better than the movie.
Oh please. First of all, I watching Ridley Scott. I mean, that dude is organized. Oh my God! I mean, he goes through the whole process where and he's got cards and notes, and I'm like, Jesus, because I feel like I'm just flying through it, and then people I know and have spoken to like yourself, who just kind of ran right through, it's like. I'm looking like, man, am I doing something wrong? When I look at this, but I guess at that scale, that and how are you on rewrites? I mean, because for me, the most rewrites I've ever done on a project, just where it was just straight up, we rewrote stuff. It was maybe like 2. I'm not really big on rewrites. What will happen is, for me, once we get in production. That's when the real rewrites start happening because stuff will be in the middle of shooting and then something the actor will bring to it or something or just I'm as a director I'm looking at it and I say man flow's not working for this and then I'll do the rewrites then but when I'm watching like I said watching those making ofs and I'm seeing Ridley Scott and he's like talking like 72 115 rewrites. Oh my God.
Well, that actually that's a good question because Erica, you said you're going to completely redo 2020 AD. Do you think that there's going to be many changes to it, or are you just doing this for the technicality of making sure you don't get sued by these creeps with the music?
For legal reasons. That's why I want to redo it. And he actually said they're only going after music that's being streamed online. Like YouTube videos, etc. But I said, you know what? What if I want, because I have the option of making the movie available on Amazon.
Sure.
You may go after that.
Yeah.
You may decide at a later date to say, hey, we don't like her selling this DVD. Let's go after it. And so, and the one the version that's on YouTube is actually an early version. The actual movie looks different. It's different. It doesn't start the way that this one starts. It's different. It's the same but different. It looks a little bit more like a movie to me. The final version, and so that's the one that was on the DVD. I just made the one on YouTube available to watch, so that people can see what they could do with it if they want, with that software, with the animation if they wanted to do it.
Okay, so essentially no changes to the story, just making sure that you are held harmless for liability.
Bingo. So I'm just taking all of the sound out of the movie, like literally like it's just going to be a silent picture, and then I'm going to add in the voice work, and then I will add in the music.
Yeah, you're going to repost produce.
Yeah, pretty much. And it's a lot of work. I mean, just getting everything lined up the right. It's a lot of work.
Absolutely.
And then some scenes don't have music, so I can leave that as is. So I have to go in and cut those parts and leave that there, and But and the only part that I really hate to take apart is the end, because I feel like that very last scene in the movie, maybe like the last 10 minutes. That music completely went with the actual movie.
Sure.
Down to the credits rolling and everything. So that's the only part that really hurts to take out. It actually physically hurts. But so I left the DVD off the market, and I feel like they took a little bit of my legacy because that was the first commercial DVD made, 3D Machinima commercial DVD ever. Mm-hmm. According to Movie Storm, because they wrote some articles about it.
That gives you more to put in your special features to talk about the trip and the trials and the tribulations in having to redo it. You know, I hate to do this, but we're coming up on the end of the show here. For those who have maybe picked this up in the middle, this Genesis Science Fiction Radio broadcast for March 22nd, 2013. Our special guest tonight has been Erica Hughes. Genesis Science Fiction Radio is a service of the BlackScienceFictionSociety.com website. We're here every Friday. We start out at 9 p.m. Eastern, and you can figure out the times for your time zone wherever you are in the world based upon that. The show is 2 hours. We're here every week. Erica, I want to thank you. I want to thank you for everything that you brought to the table. I want to thank you for your time, and I want to thank you for everything that you were able to let us know about who you are and how you do what you do.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed talking to everybody and answering questions. It was fun. So, you know, I'm happy to do it again sometime.
Well, that's great. And since we're coming up against our hard ending here, Jay, do you have anything that you'd like to say to the people out in the fine podcasting and digital realm?
Oh, just I want to continue to ask everyone to come back, listen to other people's shows. I want to thank everyone that participated. And I really want to thank Erica for sharing her experience and encouragement, because she's been encouraging me. I was one of those people that came to her asking questions. And I want to thank you for continuing to encourage us to do what we do in our own way. And as always, love, peace, and hair grease.
All right, that's great. All right, we'll be back again next Friday. That will be the March 29th show. We're not sure who the special guest will be. My name is William Hayashi. Thank you for joining me. And Erica, thank you for making me look good. Everybody have a great rest of your weekend, and we'll see you next week.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Good night.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
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 Bye-bye.